All right, so let's get started. So welcome to an AutoCAD Electrical webinar. Today we're going to be talking about some tips and tricks on how to use AutoCAD Electrical and how to improve your usage with AutoCAD Electrical. So let's get started. Today we're going to start. First of all, my name is Pablo Vaca. I'm an application specialist here at SolidCAD. We've been SolidCAD for the past 5-6 years. And I mainly focus in the manufacturing sector, working with manufacturing companies, with AutoCAD, AutoCAD Electrical, Vault, and Inventor. And if you have any questions after the webinar, you can feel free to send me an email to pablo.vaca@solidcad.ca. Okay, so today what we're going to talk about is how to create an empty database or a project-specific database. How to work with a master project so you can reuse your projects over and over, how to work with a secondary database, so you do not have to use the main one, which is a lot bigger. Another useful tool is working with a location view, using Excel to update your drawings, and some Q&A that might be related to this, what we covered today, or anything that you might have, or you have a question about AutoCAD Electrical. Okay, so let me switch to my AutoCAD Electrical here, and let's get started. All right, so let's start with creating a project-specific database. So all this is going to lead to the point where we start talking about the project, the master project. So to create a master project, we first need to create a new project, of course. So if anybody has used AutoCAD in the past, you already know how to do this. So all I'm going to do is just quickly create a new project in here. I'm going to call this master, and I'm just going to use 10/18 for the date. And this is going to be my potential master project, okay? So I'm going to click OK to finish the creation. And now we have a master project, so which is completely empty. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm just going to add a new drawing. So we have something to be based about. I'm just going to put a drawing 01. And this is going to be my first drawing, okay? So you know, if for some reason this is normal because I haven't used any title blocks, which is fine. So that's something we're going to fix in a later time. So now you have this. So now we have a drawing. I have a project which is completely empty. So now we can get the first step of creating our master project. So the first thing that we probably want to do is actually, I'm going to create a second drawing, but this time I'm going to use a template that does include the title blocks. So of course, you already know that within AutoCAD Electrical, you have some AutoCAD Electrical templates that already have that, but I'm just going to use some of the ones that I have used in the past that I know that I like to work with. So just going to use, I'm going to use just this template. We can open, this is going to call drawing 02. And once I click OK, you're going to see that now we have a second drawing, and this was going to be supposedly my master project. And you can see, because this one already has a title block, it didn't give me that error. Okay, so this is the process of creating a master project. So now the next step will be to go into the project properties and make sure that we adjust it the way that we need it to do. So when you go into right click and click on the properties, in here, you have the settings that's going to define where the software looks for my schematic libraries and where it looks for my panel footprints, as well for my icon menu and my panel footprint icon menu. So if you were working with a customized folder, I recommend to add that folder part of this folder path in here. So what I usually recommend to all the users is when you do customization with AutoCAD Electrical, have a specific folder that contains that information, that contains all that customization. I'm going to show you that example in here. I have here in my desktop I have a folder called shortcuts. And in here, I have all my AutoCAD electrical customization. I have a folder called customization. For you, could be somewhere in the network. But in this customization folder, I have everything that I do for AutoCAD electrical customization. I have a specific folder for my source and destination arrows, for my custom circuits, for footprints, regular blocks, schematics, and templates. So this is a good practice because this way you have one single location where you know where to access this information. Because if you don't do this, the software by default is going to try and save them on the default folders, and the default folders are all over the place, and it can get a little messy to try to remember them all. So as a good practice, make sure that when you start customizing anything AutoCAD Electrical, save one folder, which is going to be unique for this. So in here, you can see we have a specific folder called schematics. And in this folder, I have some schematics. So what I'm going to do in here, because this is my master project, I'm going to make sure that I add that specific folder into this folder paths, because this is where the software is going to look for my symbol, for my schematic symbols right here. So I'm going to just click on browse, add. You can see we have a new row that has been created. I click on browse, and all I need to do is go and select that folder. But keep in mind that I have to select the folder itself because the AutoCAD Electrical is not going to look inside those folders. If I just select customization, it's only going to search in this level. It's not going to go inside those folders. So if I just select customization, it's only going to try to search for the information at this level, at this main level. It's not going to go inside the schematic. So if you have different schematics saved in different folders, you would have to add those folders separately. So what I'm going to do here is select the one that's called schematics. So now I know the software is going to look into this. Click OK. And you can see now I have this specific folder path that contains that information. And as a practice, as a good practice rule, I like to make this one at the very top level, just in case that for some reason you accidentally saved one of your custom symbols with the same name as one of the symbols that have already been pre-built for you. This way, if you select the custom one, it will use the custom one first. But just try to make sure that you do not give your custom symbols very generic names. The next thing that I want to do when I'm creating a master project is define what type of tagging I want to use. So as a default, we use the family name and the number. So if I delete this information and press enter, it's going to pop up and it's going to tell me the information that I need to, that I have to put, and it gives me some previews in here. So let me use my magnifying glass. So the default address, the default naming convention that we use, it can be seen in here. For example, %F and %N is for the family name and N is for the number. In this case, most cases, it's going to be the ladder reference number. So that is the default naming convention that we use. But sometimes we might want to customize this. I mean, another formats that we can add in here is the ones that we've seen here, like the sheet value, drawing value, and so on, even the location value. So in case that you require to have the sheet number as part of your tag, you could do so. And to customize that, I would go ahead and just put maybe a dash and a %, it's a %S, and that would add the sheet number as part of the tag name. But by default, it's just the family name and the number name. So from here, I will also define if I want to use the regular line reference number or if I want to change how this is going to be numbered. So you can see by default is this, that we use the first one. And you can see from here, from the preview, that this is the default naming convention for my components. The first one just goes empty. The second component is going to be A, 100A, 100B, and so on. We can change the behavior by selecting this. And this is usually we recommend to have one standard set by the CAD manager or maybe the engineering manager. So all the users don't have to try to second guess or try to define the standards by themselves. So they know exactly what they need to use. For example, in here, we can see that the last option gives me like the S100-1, 102, and so on for the second and third and fourth instances of that component. So setting up the standards is very important in here. So you can also customize by putting values in here. If their letters are going to be added, sequentially as well as numbers. But if you don't want to use any of those formats at all, you can always just set them as sequential. So they're going to ignore the letter numbers, and they're just going to keep adding sequentially those. Another thing that we can set up from here is, and before I forget, in case that you use European standards, mostly like IEEE or IEC, we can use a component tag option. And this is something that we use when we absolutely must have the location and installation code as part of my tag. And this is something that is required, and especially in European standards, the software will allow you by selecting on here to force those standards so all your components have that information available. In North America, we don't use that much, so this is disabled by default. Next, we define how we want to use the wire numbers. By default, we only see the wire number. And again, this uses the same values that I showed you before. In case you forget what values you can use, you can always just press delete and then press enter, and an alert is going to pop up. And again, telling you that you need to use one of those values. And the default values that we're using in here are the number, just the wire number. And in here is showing me additional formats that I can use for here. Another one that's commonly used is, for example, to add the sheet numbers. Some people like to have, some companies like to have the wire number and the sheet number where that wire belongs to. So that's something that we can add in here as well. But keep in mind that the more information that you add is going to get bigger and longer. So if I wanted to add additional, I could put a dash, %S, and it would add the sheet number in here. All right. And exactly the same, we can arrange how the naming convention is going to work. By default, is going to be like this. The first one's going to be just a number, then it's going to be A, B, and C, and we can change that information. So again, it's up to the CAD manager to decide how this is going to work. From here, we can also define a couple of like graphical preferences. So the default is above the wire number displayed above the wire. Sometimes it's inline, and sometimes it's below the wire. It depends up to the user. Cross references, this one we don't really customize that much, but in case you were wondering what this information gathers, this is the cross-referencing format that we use, for example, when we're working with the circuit relays, control relays, or anything like that. And you can see an example in here. If I click on the setup, you're going to see that this is what you usually see when you have a master component, which is a relay, and then you're going to have all the connection, all the contacts that it belongs to. And from here, we can customize it a little bit. We can select, we can display the unused ones, so you always know how many spares you have. So this way you don't have to guess. But by default, this is disabled. So this is something that we can customize as well. And this is good to define this as a master project or a template project that I also like to call it. And we can also change this. Instead of having a text, we can select this to have a graphical format. So if I select this, you can see I selected the option that says graphical formatting here, and I select graphic font. You can see it changes. Instead of showing me NO and NC, it shows me this information from here. All right. So it's up to you how you want to customize this. In here, we have the last option, which is a table format. I would use this with caution, because depending on the table style that you're using, this table can get very big very quickly. So unless you're comfortable working with managing table styles with AutoCAD, I would not go ahead and go too deep into, because I think by default, this one's a little big, but it definitely looks nicer. But you will probably have to customize this to make sure that it fits to the proper sizing. But you can also display that information on a small table version of those. All right. So the next thing that we have when we're selecting a master or template project is this, the graphical styles of many of the components that we use, many of the functions that we use. First of all, you can see we have the specific styles for the source and destination arrow. You know that you have a couple ones to select. If you don't want your users to guess which one of those they need to use, for example, you have standardized within the company that you're always going to use the arrow style number 4. you can set it as a default. So anytime that we create a new drawing, it's always going to select this one by default. It's going to be the same for the PLC style. As you can see, when I change on those, it changes the graphical format. And it's going to be the same for the fan in and the fan out. As you can see from here, it changes a little bit how the references are being displayed. The first one is on top and bottom. The second one is in between the line, and so on. So you can define this. So this way, anytime that anybody copies this project or create a new drawing based on this project, is going to use those defaults. And you can also define other important stuff like how you want to manage the crossing of your wires. So by default in here, you can see that we have the loop. So this is the loop, as you can see from here, but we can also use a gap or a solid, which doesn't make too much sense for me, but I usually like to use the loop. But this one is useful, how the wires are connected. The first one, how the wire cross. This one's how my wires are connected. And for example, in here, I know a lot of companies like to use the angle to display a connection instead of just a dot. So you can change that one from here as well. All right, and the last thing that I want to show you is the drawing format. So this one's also very useful. So if you're using the regular AutoCAD laddering format, ladders to work with your schematic designs, in here, we can define the width. So by default, it's always going to show me 4.5. And if you're already using a specific title block, and you know that you only want to have 2 ladders per drawing, you can define this. This way, the user never has to guess how much they need to use. What's the width of this? So it's always going to be 10. So that way, you do not have to guess. The users do not have to guess this. And from here, we can also define, by default, you can see that referencing is my ladders. As you can see from here, let me magnify this a little bit more. So you can see this is the default, where you can see the ladders and the numbers. But AutoCAD Electrical also allow us to use other types of formatting, which we're not going to cover today, but we also have the ability to work with the X and Y grids and X zones. So this is different type of formatting that we can use, okay? But by default, we use the reference numbers. And from here, we can also go to the setup. And we can change as well how this is being displayed. But I prefer to leave it as it is. All right, so that's all the information that you need to know for creating a master project. Another thing that we can do is change how the tagging is going to be done. By default, the tagging is done by, as you can see from here, left to right, moving down. So it starts at the left, goes to the right, and moves down. So that's the default. But you can change that behavior. Left to right, moving bottom to up, right to left, moving down, right to left, moving from bottom to top. So you can change how my tagging works in here. All right, so yeah, once I have that information, I can click OK. So I'm kind of getting ready-ish to finish a master template project. So the next thing that I would like to do is probably make sure that I have the proper template done. So then once you create a template, it's going to be saved as a WDT. And another thing that I recommend when we're creating a master project is that as part of your WDT, of your template itself, I recommend users to add the wire list, because remember when you try to assign wires, from here you can see this always comes empty. What I recommend is at the template level, import the wires that you always use. Import the wires that you always use. So as long as you're creating that template with AutoCAD Electrical, you will be able to see this information. For example, in here, if I quickly open the template that I'm using, you're going to see, this is my template. In here, you're going to see that this one is empty when I try to assign any wires, but this at the template level, I can go ahead and assign those wires. So this way I don't have to manually add those wires every time that I use this template. So for example, in here, I'm just going to create and edit the wire types. You already know that to do this, you click the option import. From here, you select the wires that you want to use from a different project, of course. So I'm just going to select from the demo one. I'm just going to select a random drawing. And from here, I'm selecting those on the, I mean, it's only 3 wires, but you get the idea. And you can keep adding wires that you tend to use over and over. This way, when you are working with your template, you already have those wires ready for you to go. All right. So the next thing that I like to do when I'm creating a master project is to make sure that we have the proper supporting files. Because right now, I mean, once I have this drawing, I'm probably going to go ahead and add some schematics that I tend to reuse over and over. So for example, in here, so let me go to the icon menu. So I'm just gonna in here, I'm just gonna apply the project defaults that I use. I'm just gonna quickly create a ladder in here. And, well, it didn't apply the defaults. Property, apply project defaults. Save this. Let me just create a new drawing in here. Okay, yes, I have created this. So from here, I'm going to create a new drawing. So you can see from here, the width that I preset before is now going to be 10. So from here, I'm just going to go in here, and you can see it's always going to be 10 when I start a ladder. I select it over here. It's always going to be 10. So this way, the designers do not have to guess what's the specific width that I need to work with. So this way, you start building the most commonly used design schematics that you use. For example, let's say that you save that one to the icon menu, and you tend to use something over and over again. So what I'm going to do is just quickly copy something from here that I have used in the past. I don't know, I'm just going to go into this one over here. I'm going to create another ladder. This time I'm going to create a 3-phase ladder. That looks good. And I'm going to pretend that I have something in here that I'm going to reuse at a later time. So from here, I have my user circuits. I'm going to use this one over here. Hopefully that my scale matches. Well, close enough. So I have this one over here. Oops, that one was not perfectly placed, which is fine. Oh, actually, that one I don't want like. Let me redo this in here. Just to have an example. I know this one is good because that's the one I created not so long ago. I'm going to put it, I don't know. Actually, I think this one's for a single. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to place it in there, even if it doesn't make much sense. But nonetheless, you have something that, let's pretend that this is going to be something that I tend to use over and over. And this is the example of the table that I was talking about. So this is the table for my motors or for my relays. You can see it gets very big very quick. I think I forgot to deselect that one. So that's why what you see in here. So from here, let's pretend that we have this. I'm going to just do some housekeeping thing in here. I'm going to select drawing wise. So we have some numbers. All right. So now that we have this, we have some information in there. So you can see my wires have been added in here based on the ladder numbers. Okay. So let's pretend that I have finished creating the schematics that I normally use, and that I tend to reuse over and over. So what I would have to create multiple drawings. So the next thing that I have to check is to make sure that we have the supporting files. And the supporting files are usually found in here, or you can copy them from a different project. I mean, I'm not going to go through the whole process of creating all, but you can see that by supporting files, what I like to mention, that what I recommend to make them part of your master project are files like the WDT and the WDLs. So for example, in here, you can see that this project has a WDT that contains the information for mapping my title block, and my WDLs that contain the information for mapping my description lines. So those are two files that I recommend you have them as well. Of course, you can always just copy and paste them and save them as part of your master project in here. So I'm going to open the location so you can see from here, I'm part of the master project in here. Actually already have a WDP in there. Oh no, that's a project. And from here, I would add the respective master project. And of course, a master project supporting files. You know that for this, all you need to do is to rename them, and you will be able to start using those as well as part of your master project. And there you go. Now you have all the information that you need to start creating and reusing a master project. So now that I have all the drawings that I need to work with, I have all the supporting files that I need to work with. In here for my master project is ready to go. I'm just going to activate this one. So for example, in here, if I right click and select my descriptions, you can see that this information has been customized. I also know that I added the title block mapping. So that's it. That's good to go. Now I can reuse this over and over again because my template already contains the information for my most commonly used drawings as well. Okay, so what I will do next is make sure that I save this one in a location that cannot be easily modified. Oh, sorry, let me just change my status in here. So from here, now you can reuse this over and over. So now that you have created a master project, all you need to do to reuse them is go to the option that's called copy the project. So I'm going to close all but this one. So now that I have a master project in here called 1018, I would go to the project tab. From here, I would select the option to copy. And from here, by default, it grabs the one that's active right now. Keep in mind that if you want to copy the active drawing, the active project, you have to make sure no drawings from that project are open. And that's it. I mean, the new project name is going to put maybe the client name and any codes that you might use. And this is going to be the new name of my project. And yeah, now you have this. And you can see it's asking me to select this project as a template. Yes, this is going to be the new name. And this is going to be the location. So this is the location of my project. And project client, yeah, that looks good. I'm gonna click OK. Now it's updating. And there you go. Now you can see I have reused this. And now I have the master project in here. And I have completely reused this whole project so I can start doing those modifications. So having a practice of creating a master project so you can reuse this, reuse your most commonly used drawing, it will save you a lot of time when you're working with AutoCAD Electrical. So in here, if I create a new drawing from here as well, I'm using this template that I selected before. And now I can start using my master project. Okay. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it for the master project. Another thing that we can do is create a secondary database. I mean, if you have used electrical in the past, that you know that we have a database that can be a little large and it can be a little hard to share. Tell you why I have so many stuff open. Let me close all other drawings. So for example, if I go to the folder that contains the databases, you know that the default CAD is a file that it's big and it can be a little challenging to share this one, especially over a network, because that's depending on the, even if you have a fast network, constantly accessing a file that's over 500 megabytes, it's going to cause delays. So what I recommend to a lot of our users is create a secondary database that you can work with and that is going to have, almost no information or even no information at all. So for example, what I'm going to do from here is I'm just going to remove this drawing So I have a drawing that has no information at all. So for example, here you can see that this one has zero information, this one only has ladders, and this one has zero information. So what we have in here is a project that doesn't have any components placed yet. It doesn't have any footprints, any schematic components, and most importantly, it doesn't have any part numbers. So that is the key. So the process of creating a secondary database and making it empty is having a project that's empty, no part numbers, no components. Next, what I'm going to do is go to the project tab, select the option that says other tools. And from here, I would select the option that's called create a project specific database. So once I click on this one, this is going to allow me to create a database from this project. Okay, I'm going to change this name to second for my secondary database. And yeah, I mean, that's going to be it. I'm going to create a secondary database that's going to be empty, and I can potentially start using this to create my custom footprints in this database only. So I'm going to make sure it's separate by selecting this option over here, and I'm going to click OK. This way I have created. Does not appear to be an AutoCAD. What? Maybe it does have to have that underscore cat. Oh, I know what I did. Oops, sorry, but I changed the name of the database in here. That was my bad. This is the default cat. I cannot change the name. So this is what's basically what the software is going to be based on. And this is going to be the name of the database. So this has the one where I have to change. This is going to be my secondary database. And this is just the information where the software is writing from. So this is where we put that. This is where we rename it. Okay. So the next thing is just keep on going forward by clicking OK. And we have created a secondary database. You can see from here, from the menu over here, you can see a secondary database has been created. So what I'm going to do in here is go to that folder, and you're going to see that we have a database, this one. But look at that, still big. What happened? What happened is because we used the default cat as a template, it kind of has a hold the space for everything that was in the database. And what we usually like to do, actually, I can't recall if I have access installed or not, but there's a tool in Microsoft Access. Oh, yes, I do have it. There's a little tool in Microsoft Access that allows you to compact and repair this. So all you need to do is go to open this in the Microsoft Access or any database editing tool, because you know that the Catalog Electrical uses Microsoft Access databases. And we click on Database Tools. We select Compact and Repair. And that's it. That's all there is to it. Once I close this, you can see that this one has shrunk in size considerably. So what I'm going to do is copy this one and make it part of my master template project that I have in here. I'm going to paste it over here. Now I can make sure that the master project is going to be included with this one. And what I would like to do is tell the software to access this secondary database, which is empty, and it's a lot smaller, so users can start customizing this one. And if you're going to use that one over and over again, what you can do is go to, let's reactivate this one. And to add a secondary database as part of a project, what you need to do is right-click, Properties, and from here, you select the option that says Other. This is the catalog reference file preference. And from here, we can select an optional secondary database. You click on Browse. And in here, you have to select it. I'm just going to select it. I don't have any defaults in here. Let's go to, I think I go up, Project, I save it in here, and there it is. This is the second database, my secondary. Click OK. And now I have an empty secondary database that I can start populating when I'm using in my projects. So in here, if I activate the catalog browser, you're going to see that now in the catalog browser, we have the option for the primary. If I search in here, you're going to see that we have information. If I go to software circuit breakers, that's a lot more. You can see in here, we have over 140,000 components. But if I select the option in here at the bottom right, secondary, I click on search. Oh, my mouse is being a little weird. Look at this, it's empty. It's empty and ready for me to populate. So what we've seen so far right now is how to create a secondary database from an empty project and add it as part of my project so that I can start populating. So it only makes sense that it's easier for me to share a database that starts at 45 megabytes instead of a database that starts at over 500 megabytes. It's going to be a lot easier to share. Okay. So the next topic in the agenda is something called the location view. This is a feature that's not very used by many people, maybe for lack of knowledge, but it can be very useful. So one of the conditions to be successful to using the location view is that when you're creating your drawings and when you're working with any type of your components, you know that when you edit a component, you have the option to add a location code. And this is something that I strongly encourage the designers to use, because once you start working with large projects, trying to generate reports and trying to narrow down your list of information to make it a lot smaller is going to be hard without a location. For example, you want to create a BOM only for a project, only for a location that maybe it's the floor 1 or panel 2. Instead of creating a BOM for the whole project, I can narrow this by specifying the components. This one's located in panel 1, this is located in panel 2. It's going to be a lot easier for me to manage that information. And I do see we have some questions, but the questions, I will answer them at the end of the presentation. So don't worry, I will look at your questions. All right. So from here, once you make it a habit of using the location view, what you can do is using the location code is here in the project manager, you have this thing called the location view. And this is going to give you the ability to navigate and search for your components. So from here, the first level is going to be the project name. The next level is usually with question marks, which it means it has not been assigned an installation code, which is fine. We can leave the installation codes empty if we don't need them. But this is where I start seeing all the locations that this project has. For example, let's say that I want to see what components have been used in station 3. I just expand this and look at this. It gives me the exact list of the components that have been using in station 3. And something that's very neat is that if I right click in any of those, we can surf. Look at this. You're all familiar with the surf command, so we can easily access that information from here. So you can see we have it in here. Of course, if I double click on this one, it's going to send me to the drawing that contains that information. So this is very useful if you make it a habit of working with the location codes. And another thing that might be or not might be so useful is that we can also have access to very quick displays of information. For example, if I click on the option from here, it gives me some additional information from here. It's kind of like a mini report. So you can see it's this for station 4 or station 3. It shows me the list of all the ones that I have in here. And this is like a unique report located in the location view. You can see the location, the tag, manufacturer, catalog number, all of this are in the location. And as any other report in AutoCAD Electrical, you can export it by clicking on here. And you can save it as a CSV or an Excel file. So that's another, a very quick way to access information about the components and a specific location. And if you right click in any of this, you can add additional information from here, like any other of the columns in AutoCAD Electrical. All right, and the last thing that I want to show you before I open the floor for Q&A is how to use Excel to work to update. Oh, I accidentally closed this. To work with, to make them update information in my project. So for example, in here, I have this project. You can see in here, we have some descriptions. We have a bunch of spare. And in here, if I right click and edit this component, you're going to see that we have this address formatting like you see it in here with a dash and so on. So for example, let's say that we wanted to do a lot of changes in some of the information here. For example, let's say that you needed to rename all your address and you needed to rename all your spares or something like that. What we can do is go to the import and export data. So from here, what I'm going to do is select the option export to spreadsheet. So we have two sections, export and import. So from here, when I select the option to export, I can select the type of components that I want to export. I'm going to select them all. This is not very busy, so I'm going to select them all. So you can see what type of information we can grab from here. So this is going to export all the AutoCAD electrical information in an Excel file. I'm going to select for the active drawing. And I'm going to select an Excel file format, click OK. And I'm going to save it on my desktop for easy access. All right. So now that that file has been created, I'm going to go to my desktop and you can see we have an Excel file in here. And once we open this, you're going to see that we have a lot of different sheets. Start with comp. This is going to the information for my component. I do not recommend you to try to modify the component names. I mean, you could, but I wouldn't, because you know that there's specific family format that it needs to work with, the software that needs to work with. I wouldn't work with modify the terminals. Anything that you see with a little, how to call it? Where's my magnifying glass? With a green and something like that. And anytime that you see information that has been placed in parentheses, it means that you cannot modify it. If you modify those fields, you can potentially break something. So you have to be careful about that. You cannot modify anything that has the value in parentheses, like the file name and this information that I'm not too sure what it is. So from here, you have additional information for my PLC modules. And this is the description. For example, in here, you can see that we have a lot of spares. Let's say that for some reason we needed to change spares to empty. I don't know. Instead of spares, we wanted to call them empty. And I can go ahead and copy all those in here, and I'm going to call them empty. And you can see I'm doing a lot of changes very quickly. Another thing that I wanted to do in here is change the address and format. So for example, in here, you can see that the format that they use is with a dash, but I do not want to use a dash. I want to use a dot because that is what my client required me to do. So what I'm going to do in here is just take advantage of the features that Excel has. And I'm renaming, actually, it's not going sequentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or up to here. Make sure that we know, or maybe we just wanted to rename them all, but I'm going to be consistent in here to make sure that we are doing this properly. And you can see from here that I'm just updating all the addresses. Just like you would do in anything in Excel. Oops, come on. There you go. And you can see that, oh, this one I didn't do it. Oops. And you can see I have updated all my addresses. Instead of a dash, I'm using a dot because I needed to change. And I also changed the information from here. All right. And remember, you can change the descriptions. You can change the addressing. Do not change anything that you see in parentheses. If you change any information from there, it can potentially break. And from here, we can potentially rename a bunch of components, rename a bunch of wire numbers from here. The signal codes I wouldn't modify, but the descriptions, this is for panels and panel terminals. But for now, I'm just going to focus on this little section from here for my PLCs. I'm going to click on save. And now Let's go back to the software. And you can see, for example, here we have spare, spare, spare. You can see this one's using an old format. So now, if I want to update this information, all I need to do is to import it. So make sure that you save and close this, the Excel file. Now let's go to the import from spreadsheet. And actually, I think I missed the first one. It doesn't matter. From spreadsheet, I'm going to go to, it was this one. I click on open, active drawing, just leave the defaults as they are. Click OK. And now the software is going to update the information. You can see from here, it changed the value to empty. And you can see my address has changed as well. So you can see that's a very quick way to change this information. And to do those changes, I mean, you can just send a spreadsheet to somebody that doesn't even know how to use AutoCAD Electrical, and they'll still be able to change that information as long as they follow the guidelines of not modifying specific fields. And you can see all that information has been changed from here. Okay, and that's it. That's it. So we have about 10 minutes. And if anybody has any questions, I'll start looking at them right now. So I have a question from Glenn. Do you have a secondary database for PLC types? No, we do not have a secondary database because we only have one unique database that we can customize. It's not that big, but we only have one unique one that we can work with. So in case you were wondering where the PLC database is, I'm going to go to my shortcuts in here because it's hard for me, even for me, I've used the software for many years and I still have a hard time remember every single folder. And you can see this is the ACE-PLC MDV. This is a pretty small file. And if you wanted to customize the PLC database, you need to go to the schematic. You go to, oh no, yeah, schematic. Yeah, you go to the schematic, other tools. From here, you click on the option that says in here, PLC database editor, and this is going to modify the unique PLC database, which we can only use one at a time. The only one that allows you to use a secondary database is the catalog numbers and the manufacturers. Okay. Any other questions regarding what we have seen, or any questions in AutoCAD Electrical in general? If you have any questions that I can answer in the time that we have remaining, I'll be happy to do so. So if there's any questions, I will wait. Otherwise, that will be it for today, for this webinar. And I hope that you have learned a few things here and there on how to use the software more efficiently. And remember, if you have any questions in the future, you can always contact me. My email is right here. I'm just going to pop up this again. So you can see my email is right here. Pablo Vaca at SolidCAD. We have a question. Is there a way to change the default text size to war numbers? Yes, I mean, we cannot change the default, but there are tools. So the question is, we can change the default text and size of the war numbers. While we cannot change the default size, what we can do is change the size of all the wars on all the text for the whole project. So for example, let's say that I wanted to make all my PLC descriptions smaller because for some reason they're too big. I will go to the project tab. And from here, you're going to see that we have an option called utilities. And from here, we have something called change an attribute size. So from here, if you click in the setup, it's going to pop up this window that shows me all the fonts, all the text that I use, including my war numbers. Do I see my war here? Including the war numbers in here. I just happen to know that the default size for my war number for most of my text in AutoCAD Electrical is 0.125. So if I wanted to change, for example, the size of my parent test or my war number, so let me see if we have some war numbers in this one. Yeah, we do. Let me just run the war numbering command just so you can see it. And drawing wide. Okay, it added a bunch of word numbers. For example, let's say that I want to make them all a little bit bigger or smaller. I would go to the project tab, go to utilities, go to the setup. I would select my wire number. And from here, I will change the size. Remember, I mentioned that the default size is 0.125. I'm going to make it 0.124. So it's going to be a little bit, actually it's going to be significantly more larger. When I click OK, and from here I can select everything that I want to change: the parent tags, the descriptions, the child tags, the location, PLC descriptions, and everything that you see here. This is all the attributes that we're using AutoCAD Electrical. If I click OK, and you can select them all. Maybe you want to change the size of everything. So if I click OK, and once I click OK on this, it's going to ask me what I want to process. For this case, I'm only going to select for the active drawing. I click OK, and I can select for the whole project. It would change the wire numbers, the wire size for all my projects. I click OK. And I don't know how much of a difference was it graphically, but if I press Control-1, you can see in here, by clicking on the properties, that, where is the size? Oh, I don't see the size in here, but it has changed the size. I can't see the size in here for some reason, but it has changed the size. It has changed the size, so I can see it's a little bit bigger right now. Surprised I don't see the size exactly from here. Maybe I'm missing something. Scale, position, name, attributes. Well, another tip in case you were wondering how to figure out what the size that you're seeing right now is. What we can do is right click. Oh, sorry, I would go to the schematic. I would go into this option over here that says, and this is the editing tool for my attributes. I would select the option that's called change attribute size. From here, I would select pick to see what size I'm going to work with. I select this one, and you can see this is the size that I changed them. This is the size 0.124. If I select any other text, oops, I missed this one. Let's relaunch that command. If I select this one over here, you can see the default size is 125. Okay. So I hope, Andrew, that answered your question. Any other questions for the last few minutes that we have? Any other questions at all? All right, so it doesn't seem that we have any more questions. So I just wanted to thank you for attending this AutoCAD Electrical webinar. Again, I hope this information was a little useful. If you have any questions at all, and here is my email, I'll be happy to help you answer any other questions. We also provide training and update training, and of course, mentoring in case you need to update or upgrade your skills with AutoCAD Electrical and any other Autodesk software. So I want to thank you again, and I hope to hear from you guys in the future. Thank you and take care.